and welcome back to the Reading Corner. I'm your host, Renee, and I am here for you every Wednesday reading short stories or full-length novels that are in the public domain. And this week, we are on our second episode of The Professor by Charlotte Brontë. So if you haven't seen the first episode, you need to go back and watch that or read the first three chapters yourself before you jump into this episode. But without further ado, let's get into it. Chapter 4. No man likes to acknowledge that he has made a mistake in the choice of his profession, and every man worthy of the name will row long against the wind and tide before he allows himself to cry out, "I am baffled," and submits to be floated passively back to land. From the first week of my residence in X, I felt my occupation irksome. The thing itself, the work of copying and translating business letters, was a dry and tedious task enough, but had that been all, I should long have borne with the nuisance. I am not of an impatient nature, and influenced by the double desire of getting my living and justifying to myself and others the resolution I had taken to become a tradesman. I should have endured in silence the rust and cramp of my best faculties. I should not have whispered, even inwardly, that I longed for liberty. I should have pent in every sigh by which my heart might have ventured to intimate its distress under the closeness, smoke, monotony, and joyous tumult of Big Ben Close, and its panting desire for freer and fresher scenes. I should have set up the image of duty, the fetish of perseverance, in my small bedroom at Mrs. King's lodgings, and they too should have been my household gods, from which my darling, my cherished in secret imagination, the tender and the mighty, should never, either by softness or strength, have severed me. But this was not all. The antipathy which had sprung up between myself and my employer, striking deeper root and spreading denser shade daily, excluded me from every glimpse of the sunshine of life, and I began to feel like a plant growing in humid darkness out of the slimy walls of a well. Antipathy is the only word which can express the feeling Edward Crimsworth had for me, a feeling in a great measure involuntary, and which was liable to be excited by the most trifling movement, look, or word of mine. My southern accent annoyed him. The degree of education evinced in my language irritated him. My punctuality, industry, and accuracy fixed his dislike, and gave it the high flavor and poignant relish of envy. He feared that I too should one day make a successful tradesman. Had I been in anything inferior to him, he would not have hated me so thoroughly, but I knew all that he knew, and what was worse, he suspected that I kept the padlock of silence on mental wealth in which he was no sharer. If he could have once placed me in a ridiculous or mortifying position, he would have forgiven me much, but I was guarded by three faculties: caution, tact, observation. And prowling and prying as Edward's malignity, it could never baffle the lynx eyes of these, my natural sentinels. Day by day did his malice watch my tact, hoping it would sleep, and prepared to steal snake-like on its slumber. But tact, if it be genuine, never sleeps. I had received my first quarter's wages, and was returning to my lodgings, possessed heart and soul with the pleasant feeling that the master who had paid me grudged every penny of that hard-earned pittance. I had long ceased to regard Mr. Crimsworth as my brother. He was a hard, grinding master. He wished to be an inexorable tyrant. That was all. Thoughts, not varied but strong, occupied my mind. Two voices spoke within me. Again and again they uttered the same monotonous phrases. One said, "William, your life is intolerable." The other, "What can you do to alter it?" I walked fast, for it was a cold, frosty night in January. As I approached my lodgings, I turned from a general view of my affairs to the particular speculation as to whether my fire would be out. Looking toward the window of my sitting room, I saw no cheering red gleam. "That slut of a servant has neglected it as usual," said I, "and I shall see nothing but pale ashes if I go in. It is a fine starlight night. I will walk a little further." It was a fine night, and the streets were dry and even clean for X. There was a crescent curve of moonlight to be seen by the parish church tower, and hundreds of stars shone keenly bright in all quarters of the sky. Unconsciously, I steered my course toward the country. I had got into Grove Street and begun to feel the pleasure of seeing dim trees at the extremity, round a suburban house, when a person leaning over the iron gate of one of the small gardens, which front the neat dwelling-houses in this street, addressed me as I was hurrying with quick stride past. "What the deuce is the hurry? Just so much lot have left Sodom when you expected fire to pour down upon it out of burning brass clouds." I stopped short and looked toward the speaker. I smelt the fragrance and saw the red spark of a cigar. The dusk outline of a man, too, bent toward me over the wicket. "You see, I am meditating in the field at eventide," continued this shade. "God knows it's cool work, especially as instead of Rebecca on a camel's hump with bracelets on her arm and a ring in her nose, fate sends me only a counting-house clerk in a grey tweed wrapper." The voice was familiar to me. Its second utterance enabled me to seize the speaker's identity. "Mr. Hunsden, good evening." "Good evening, indeed. Yes, but you would have passed me without recognition if I had not been so civil as to speak first." "I did not know you." "A famous excuse. You ought to have known me. I knew you, though you were going ahead like a steam engine. Are the police after you?" "It wouldn't be worth their while. I'm not of consequence enough to attract them." "Alas, poor shepherd, alack and well a day! What a theme for regret, and how down in the mouth you must be, judging from the sound of your voice. But since you're not running from the police, from whom are you running? The devil?" "On the contrary, I am going post to him." "That's well. You're just in luck. This is Tuesday evening. There are scores of market gigs and carts returning to Dinford tonight, and he or some of his have a seat in all regularly. So if you'll step in and sit half an hour in my bachelor's parlour, you might catch him as he passes without much trouble. I think, though, you'd better let him alone tonight. He'll have so many customers to serve. Tuesday is his busy day in X and Dinford. Come in all events." He swung the wicket open as he spoke. "Do you really wish me to go in?" I asked. "As you please. I'm alone. Your company for an hour or two would be agreeable to me. But if you don't choose to favour me so far, I'll not press the point. I hate to bore anyone." It suited me to accept the invitation, as it suited Hunsden to give it. I passed through the gate and followed him to the front door, which he opened. Thence we traversed a passage and entered his parlour. The door being shut, he pointed me to an armchair by the hearth. I sat down and glanced round me. It was a comfortable room, at once snug and handsome. The bright grate was filled with a genuine Shire fire red, clear and generous. No penurious south of England embers heaped in a corner of a grate. On the table a shaded lamp diffused round a soft, pleasant, and equal light. The furniture was almost luxurious for a young bachelor, comprising a couch and 2 very easy chairs. Bookshelves filled the recesses on each side of the mantelpiece. They were well furnished and arranged with perfect order. The neatness of the room suited my taste. I hated irregular and slovenly habits. From what I saw, I concluded that Hunsden's idea on that point corresponded with my own. While he removed from the centre table to the sideboard a few pamphlets and periodicals, I ran my eye along the shelves of the bookcase nearest me. French and German works predominated. The old French dramatists, sundry modern authors, Thiers, Villemain, Paul de Kock, George Sand, Eugene Sue. In German, Goethe, Schiller, Joschke, Jean-Paul Richter. In English, there were works on political economy. I examined no further, for Mr. Hunsden himself recalled my attention. "You shall have something," said he. For you ought to feel disposed for refreshment after walking nobody knows how far on such a Canadian night as this. But it shall not be brandy and water, and it shall not be a bottle of port, nor ditto of sherry. I keep no such poisons. I have Rhine wine for my own drinking, and you may choose between that and coffee." Here again, Hunsdon suited me. If there was one generally received practice I abhorred more than another, it was the habitual imbibing of spirits and strong wines. I had, however, no fancy for his acid German nectar, but I liked coffee, so I responded, "Give me some coffee, Mr. Hunsdon." I perceived my answer pleased him. He had doubtless expected to see a chilling effect produced by his steady announcement that he would give me neither wine nor spirits. He just shot one searching glance at my face to ascertain whether my cordiality was genuine or a mere feint of politeness. I smiled because I quite understood him, and while I honored his conscientious firmness, I was amused at his mistrust. He seemed satisfied, rang the bell, and ordered coffee, which was presently brought. For himself, a bunch of grapes and half a pint of something sour sufficed. My coffee was excellent. I told him so, and expressed the shuddering pity with which his anchorite fare inspired me. He did not answer, and I scarcely think heard my remark. At that moment, one of those momentary eclipses I before alluded to had come over his face, extinguishing his smile, and replacing by an abstracted and alienated look the customarily shrewd, bantering glance of his eye. I employed the interval of silence in a rapid scrutiny of his physiognomy. I had never observed him closely before, and as my sight is very short, I had gathered only a vague, general idea of his appearance. I was surprised now, on examination, to perceive how small and even feminine were his lineaments. His tall figure, long and dark locks, his voice and general bearing had impressed me with the notion of something powerful and massive. Not at all. My own features were cast in a harsher and squarer mold than his. I discerned that there would be contrasts between his inward and outward man, contentions too, for I suspected his soul had more of will and ambition than his body had of fibre and muscle. Perhaps in these incompatibilities of the physique with the morale lay the secret of that fitful gloom. He would, but could not, and the athletic mind scowled scorn on its more fragile companion. As to his good looks, I should have liked to have a woman's opinion on that subject. It seemed to me that his face might produce the same effect on a lady that a very piquant and interesting, though scarcely pretty, female face would on a man. I have mentioned his dark locks. They were brushed sideways above a white and sufficiently expansive forehead. His cheeks had a rather hectic freshness. His features might have done well on canvas, but indifferently in marble. They were plastic. Character had set a stamp upon each, expression recast them at her pleasure, and strange metamorphoses she wrought, giving him now the mien of a morose bull, and anon that of an arch and mischievous girl. More frequently the two semblances were blent, and a queer, composite countenance they made. Starting from his silent fit, he began, "William, what a fool you are to live in those dismal lodgings of Mrs. King's, when you might take rooms here in Grove Street and have a garden like me." "I should be too far from the mill." "What of that? It would do you good to walk there and back 2 or 3 times a day. Besides, are you such a fossil that you never wish to see a flower or a green leaf?" "I am no fossil." "What are you then? You sit at that desk in Crimsworth's counting-house day by day and week by week, scraping with a pen on paper just like an automaton. You never get up, you never say you're tired, you never ask for a holiday, you never take change or relaxation. You give way to no excess of an evening. You neither keep wild company nor indulge in strong drink." "Do you, Mr. Hunsdon?" "Don't think to pose me with short questions. Your case and mine are diametrically different, and it is nonsense attempting to draw a parallel. I say that when a man endures patiently what ought to be unendurable, he is a fossil." "Whence do you acquire the knowledge of my patience?" "Why, man, do you suppose you are a mystery? The other night you seemed surprised at my knowing to what family you belonged. Now you find subject for wonderment in my calling you patient. What do you think I do with my eyes and ears? I've been in your counting-house more than once when Crimsworth has treated you like a dog, called for a book, for instance, and when you gave him the wrong one, or what he chose to consider the wrong one, flung it back almost in your face, desired you to shut or open the doors if you had been his flunky. To say nothing of your position at the party about a month ago, where you had neither place nor partner, but hovered about like a poor shabby hanger-on, and how patient you were under each and all of those circumstances. Well, Mr. Hunsden, what then? I can hardly tell you what then. The conclusion to be drawn as to your character depends upon the nature of those motives which guide your conduct. If you are patient because you expect to make something eventually out of Crimsworth, notwithstanding his tyranny, or perhaps by means of it, you are what the world calls an interested and mercenary. But may be a very wise fellow. If you are patient because you think it a duty to meet insult with submission, you are an essential sap, and in no shape the man for my money. If you are patient because your nature is phlegmatic, flat, inexcitable, and that you cannot get up to the pitch of resistance, why, God made you to be crushed. Lie down by all means, and lie flat, and let Juggernaut ride well over you. Mr. Hunsden's eloquence was not, it will be perceived, of the smooth and oily order. As he spoke, he pleased me ill. I seemed to recognize in him one of those characters who, sensitive enough themselves, are selfishly relentless toward the sensitiveness of others. Moreover, though he was neither like Crimsworth nor Lord Tynesdale, yet he was acrid, and I suspected overbearing in his way. There was a tone of despotism in the urgency of the very reproaches by which he aimed at goading the oppressed into rebellion against the oppressor. Looking at him still more fixedly than I had yet done, I saw written in his eye and mane a resolution to arrogate to himself a freedom so unlimited that it might often trench on the just liberty of his neighbors. I rapidly ran over these thoughts. I laughed a low and involuntary laugh, moved thereto by the slight inward revelation of the inconsistency of man. It was, as I thought. Hunsden had expected me to take with calm his incorrect and offensive surmises, his bitter and haughty taunts, and himself was chafed by a laugh scarce louder than a whisper. His brow darkened, his thin nostril dilated a little. "Yeah," he began, "I told you that you were an aristocrat, and who but an aristocrat would laugh such a laugh as that, and look such a look? A laugh frigidly jeering, a look lazily mutinous. Gentleman-like irony, patrician resentment? What a nobleman you would have made, William Crimsworth! You are cut out for one. Pity fortune has balked nature. Look at the features, figure, even to the hands. Distinction all over. Ugly distinction. Now, if you'd only an estate and a mansion, and a park and a title, how you could play the exclusive. Maintain the rights of your class, train your tenantry in habits of respect to the peerage, oppose at every step the advancing power of the people, support your rotten order, and be ready, for its sake, to wade knee-deep in churl's blood. As it is, you've no power, you can do nothing. You're wrecked and stranded on the shores of commerce, forced into collision with practical men, with whom you cannot cope, for you'll never be a tradesman." The first part of Hunsden's speech moved me not at all, or if it did, it was only to wonder at the perversion into which prejudice had twisted his judgment of my character. The concluding sentence, however, not only moved, but shook me. The blow it gave was a severe one, because truth wielded the weapon. If I smiled now, it was only in disdain of myself. Hunsden saw his advantage. He followed it up. "You'll make nothing by trade," continued he, "nothing more than the crust of dry bread and the draught of fair water on which you now live. Your only chance of getting a competency lies in marrying a rich widow, or running away with an heiress." "I leave such shifts to be put in practice by those who devise them," said I, rising. "And even that is hopeless," he went on coolly. "What widow would have you, much less what heiress? You're not bold or venturesome enough for the one, and not handsome and fascinating enough for the other. You think perhaps you look intelligent and polished, carry your intellect and refinement to market, and tell me in a private note what price is bid for them." Mr. Hunsden had taken his tone for the night. The string he struck was out of tune. he would finger no other. Averse to discord, of which I have enough every day and all day long, I concluded at last that silence and solitude were preferable to jarring converse. I bade him good night. "What? Are you going, lad? Well, good night. You'll find the door." And he sat still in front of the fire while I left the room and the house. I had got a good way on my return to my lodgings before I found out that I was walking very fast and breathing very hard, and that my nails were almost stuck into the palms of my clenched hands, and that my teeth were set fast. On making this discovery, I relaxed both my pace, fists, and jaws, but I could not so soon cause the regrets rushing rapidly through my mind to slacken their tide. Why did I make myself a tradesman? Why did I enter Hunsden's house this evening? Why at dawn tomorrow must I repair to Crimsworth Mill? All that night did I ask myself these questions, and all that night fiercely demanded of my soul an answer. I got no sleep. My head burned, my feet froze. At last the factory bells rang, and I sprang from my bed with other slaves. Chapter 5. There is a climax to everything, to every state of feeling as well as to every position in life. I turned this truism over in my mind as, in the frosty dawn of a January morning, I hurried down the steep and now icy street which descended from Mrs. King's to the Close. The factory work people had preceded me by nearly an hour, and the mill was all lighted up and in full operation when I reached it. I repaired to my post in the counting-house as usual. The fire there, but just lit, as yet only smoked. Staton had not yet arrived. I shut the door and sat down at the desk. My hands, recently washed in half-frozen water, were still numb. I could not write till they had regained vitality, so I went on thinking, and still the theme of my thoughts was the climax. Self-dissatisfaction troubled exceedingly the current of my meditations. "Come, William Crimsworth," said my conscience, or whatever it is that within ourselves takes ourselves to task. "Come, get a clear notion of what you would have, or what you would not have. You talk of a climax. Pray, has your endurance reached its climax? It is not 4 months old. What a fine resolute fellow you imagined yourself to be when you told Tynesdale you would tread in your father's steps, and a pretty treading you are likely to make of it. How well you like X. Just at this moment, how redolent of pleasant associations are its streets, its shops, its warehouses, its factories. How the prospect of this day cheers you! Letter copying till noon, solitary dinner at your lodgings, letter copying till evening, solitude. For you neither find pleasure in Brown's, nor Smith's, nor Nichols, nor Eccles' company. And as to Hunsden, you fancied there was pleasure to be derived from his society. He? How did you like the taste you had of him last night? Was it sweet? Yet he is a talented and original-minded man, and even he does not like you. Your self-respect defies you to like him. He has always seen you to disadvantage. He always will see you to disadvantage. Your positions are unequal, and were they on the same level, your minds could not assimilate. Never hope, then, to gather the honey of friendship out of that thorn-guarded plant. Hello, Crimsworth, where are your thoughts tending? You leave the recollection of Hunsden as a bee would a rock, as a bird a desert, and your aspirations spread eager wings toward a land of visions where, now, in advancing daylight, in X, daylight, you dare to dream of congeniality, repose, union? Those three you will never meet in this world. They are angels. The souls of just men made perfect may enter them in heaven, but your soul will never be made perfect. 8 o'clock strikes. Your hands are thawed. Get to work. Work? Why should I work? Said I sullenly. I cannot please, though I toil like a slave. Work, work, reiterated the inward voice. I may work, it will do no good, I growled. Nevertheless, I drew out a packet of letters and commenced my task. Task thankless and bitter as that of the Israelite crawling over the sun-baked fields of Egypt in search of straw and stubble wherewith to accomplish his tale of bricks. About 10 o'clock I heard Mr. Crimsworth's gig turn into the yard, and in a minute or two he entered the counting-house. It was his custom to glance his eye at Staton and myself, to hang up his mackintosh, stand a minute with his back to the fire, and then walk out. Today he did not deviate from his usual habits. The only difference was that when he looked at me, his brow, instead of being merely hard, was surly. His eye, instead of being cold, was fierce. He studied me a minute or two longer than usual, but went out in silence. 12 o'clock arrived. The bell rang for a suspension of labor. The workpeople went off to their dinners. Staton, too, departed, desiring me to lock the counting-house door and take the key with me. I was tying up a bundle of papers and putting them in their place, preparatory to closing my desk, when Crimsworth reappeared at the door, and entering, closed it behind him. "You'll stay here a minute," said he, in a deep, brutal voice, while his nostrils distended and his eyes shot a spark of sinister fire. Alone with Edward, I remembered our relationship, and remembering that, forgot the difference of position. I put away deference and careful forms of speech. I answered with simple brevity. "It is time to go home," I said, turning the key in my desk. "You'll stay here," he reiterated, "and take your hand off that key. Leave it in the lock." "Why?" asked I. "What cause is there for changing my usual plans?" "Do as I order. And no questions. You are my servant. Obey me. What have you been about?" He was going on in the same breath when an abrupt pause announced that rage had for the moment got the better of articulation. "You may look, if you wish to know," I replied. "There is the open desk. There are the papers." "Confound your insolence! What have you been about?" "Your work, and I have done it well." "Hypocrite and twaddler, smooth-faced, snivelling grease-horn!" This last term is, I believe, purely Shire, and alludes to the horn of black, rancid whale oil, usually to be seen suspended to cartwheels and employed for greasing the same. "Come, Edward Crimsworth, enough of this. It is time you and I wound up accounts. I have now given your service 3 months' trial, and I find it the most nauseous slavery under the sun. Seek another clerk. I stay no longer." "What? Do you dare to give me notice? Stop at least for your wages." He took down the heavy gig whip hanging beside his mackintosh. I permitted myself to laugh with a degree of scorn I took no pains to temper or hide. His fury boiled up, and when he had sworn 6 vulgar, impious oaths, without, however, venturing to lift the whip, he continued, "I've found you out, and I know you thoroughly, you mean, whining lickspittle. What have you been saying all over X about me? Answer me that." "You? I have neither inclination nor temptation to talk about you." "You lie. It is your practice to talk about me. It is your constant habit to make public complaint of the treatment you receive at my hands. You've gone and told it far and near that I give you low wages and knock you about like a dog. I wish you were a dog. I'd set to this minute and never stir from the spot till I'd cut every strip of flesh from your bones with this whip." He flourished his tool. The end of the lash just touched my forehead. A warm, excited thrill ran through my veins. My blood seemed to give a bound and then raced fast and hot along its channels. I got up nimbly, came round to where he stood, and faced him. "Down with your whip," said I, "and explain this instant what you mean." "Sirrah! To whom are you speaking?" "To you. There is no one else present, I think. You say I have been calumniating you, complaining of your low wages and bad treatment. Give your ground for those assertions." Crimsworth had no dignity, and when I sternly demanded an explanation, he gave one in a loud, scolding voice. "Grounds? You shall have them, and turn to the light that I may see your brazen face bluish black when you hear yourself proved to be a liar and a hypocrite. At a public meeting in the town hall yesterday, I had the pleasure of hearing myself insulted by the speaker opposed to me in the question under discussion by allusions to my private affairs, by cant about monsters without natural affection, family despots, and such trash, and when I rose to answer, I was met by a shout from the filthy mob, where the mention of your name enabled me at once to detect the quarter in which this base attack had originated. When I looked round, I saw that treacherous villain Hunsden acting as a fugleman. I detected you in close conversation with Hunsden at my house a month ago, and I know that you were at Hunsden's rooms last night. Deny it if you dare." "Oh, I shall not deny it. And if Hunsden hounded on the people to hiss you, he did quite right. You deserve popular execration. For a worse man, a harder master, a more brutal brother than you are, has seldom existed." "Sirrah!" reiterated Crimsworth, and to complete his apostrophe, he cracked the whip straight over my head. A minute sufficed to wrest it from him, break it in 2 pieces, and throw it under the grate. He made a headlong rush at me, which I evaded, and said, "Touch me, and I will have you up before the nearest magistrate." Men like Crimsworth, if firmly and calmly resisted, always abate something of their exorbitant insolence. He had no mind to be brought before a magistrate, and I suppose he saw I meant what I said. After an odd and long stare at me, at once bull-like and amazed, he seemed to bethink himself that, after all, his money gave him sufficient superiority over a beggar like me, and that he had in his hands a surer and more dignified mode of revenge than that somewhat hazardous one of personal chastisement. "Take your hat," said he. "Take what belongs to you and get out of that door. Get away to your parish, you pauper. Beg, steal, starve, get transported, do what you like, but at your peril venture again into my sight. If ever I hear of your setting foot on an inch of ground belonging to me, I'll hire a man to cane you." "It is not likely you'll have the chance. Once off your premises, what temptation can I have to return to them? I leave a prison, I leave a tyrant, I leave what is worse than the worst that can lie before me, so no fear of my coming back." "Go, or I'll make you!" exclaimed Crimsworth. I walked deliberately to my desk, took out such of its contents as were my own property, put them in my pocket, locked the desk, and placed the key on top. "What are you abstracting from that desk?" demanded the mill owner. "Leave it all behind in its place, or I'll send for a policeman to search you." "Look sharp about it, then," said I, and I took down my hat, drew on my gloves, and walked leisurely out of the counting-house, walked out of it to enter it no more. I recollect that when the mill bell rang the dinner hour before Mr. Crimsworth entered, and the scene above related took place, I had had rather a sharp appetite, and had been waiting somewhat impatiently to hear the signal of feeding time. I forgot it now, however. The images of potatoes and roast mutton were effaced from my mind by the stir and tumult which the transaction of the last half-hour had there excited. I only thought of walking, that the action of my muscles might harmonize with the action of my nerves, and walk I did, fast and far. How could I do otherwise? A load was lifted off my heart. I felt light and liberated. I had got away from Big Ben Close without a breach of resolution, without injury to my self-respect. I had not forced circumstances. Circumstances had freed me. Life was again open to me. No longer was its horizon limited by the high black wall surrounding Crimsworth's mill. 2 hours had elapsed before my sensations had so far subsided as to leave me calm enough to remark for what wider and clearer boundaries I had exchanged that sooty girdle. When I did look up, lo! Straight before me lay Grovetown, a village of villas about 5 miles out of X. The short winter day, as I perceived from the far declined sun, was already approaching its close. A chill frost mist was rising from the river on which X stands, and along whose banks the road I had taken lay. It dimmed the earth, but did not obscure the clear icy blue of the January sky. There was a great stillness near and far. The time of the day favored tranquillity, as the people were all employed within doors, the hour of evening release from the factories not being yet arrived. A sound of full-flowing water alone pervaded the air, for the river was deep and abundant, swelled by the melting of a late snow. I stood a while, leaning over a wall, and looking down at the current I watched the rapid rush of its waves. I desired memory to take a clear and permanent impression of the scene, and treasure it for future years. Grovetown church clock struck 4. Looking up, I beheld the last of that day's sun, glinting red through the leafless boughs of some very old oak trees surrounding the church. Its light colored and characterized the picture as I wished. I paused yet a moment till the sweet, slow sound of the bell had quite died out of the air. Then, ear, eye, and feeling satisfied, I quitted the wall and once more turned my face toward X. Chapter 6. I re-entered the town a hungry man. The dinner I had forgotten reoccurred seductively to my recollection, and it was with a quick step and sharp appetite I ascended the narrow street leading to my lodgings. It was dark when I opened the front door and walked into the house. I wondered how my fire would be. The night was cold, and I shuddered at the prospect of a grate full of sparkless cinders. To my joyful surprise, I found, on entering my sitting room, a good fire and a clean hearth. I had hardly noticed this phenomenon when I became aware of another subject for wonderment. The chair I usually occupied near the hearth was already filled. A person sat there with his arms folded on his chest and his legs stretched out on the rug. Short-sighted as I am, doubtless as was the gleam of the firelight, a moment's examination enabled me to recognize in this person my acquaintance, Mr. Hunsden. I could not, of course, be much pleased to see him, considering the manner in which I had parted from him the night before, and as I walked to the hearth, stirred the fire, and said coolly, "Good evening," my demeanor evinced as little cordiality as I felt. Yet I wondered in my own mind what had brought him there, and I wondered also what motives had induced him to interfere so actively between me and Edward. It was to him, it appeared, that I owed my welcome dismissal. Still, I could not bring myself to ask him questions, to show any eagerness of curiosity. If he chose to explain, he might, but the explanation should be a perfectly voluntary one on his part. I thought he was entering upon it. "You owe me a debt of gratitude," were his first words. "Do I?" said I. "I hope it is not a large one, for I am much too poor to charge myself with heavy liabilities of any kind." "Then declare yourself bankrupt at once, for this liability is a ton weight at least. When I came in I found your fire out, and I had it lit again, and I made that sulky drab of a servant stay and blow at it with the bellows till it had burnt up properly. Now, say thank you." "Not till I've had something to eat. I can thank nobody while I am so famished." I rang the bell and ordered tea and some cold meat. "Cold meat!" exclaimed Hunsden, as the servant closed the door. "What a glutton you are, man! Meat with tea! You'll die of eating too much." "No, Mr. Hunsden, I shall not." I felt a necessity for contradicting him. I was irritated with hunger, and irritated at seeing him there, and irritated at the continued roughness of his manner. "It is overeating that makes you so ill-tempered," said he. "How do you know?" I demanded. "It is like you to give a pragmatical opinion without being acquainted with any of the circumstances of the case. I have had no dinner." What I said was petulant and snappish enough, and Hunsden only replied by looking in my face and laughing. "Poor thing," he whined after a pause. "It has had no dinner, has it? Why, I suppose its master would not let it come home. Did Crimsworth order you to fast by way of punishment, William?" "No, Mr. Hunsden." Fortunately, at this sulky juncture tea was brought in, and I fell to upon some bread and butter and cold beef directly. Having cleared a plateful, I became so far humanized as to intimate to Mr. Hunsden that he need not sit there staring, but might come to the table and do as I did if he liked. "But I don't like in the least," said he, and therewith he summoned the servant by a fresh pull of the bell rope, and intimated a desire to have a glass of toast and water. "And some more coal," he added. "Mr. Crimsworth shall keep a good fire while I stay." His orders being executed, he wheeled his chair round to the table, so as to be opposite me. "Well," he proceeded, "you're out of work, I suppose?" "Yes," said I, and not disposed to show the satisfaction I felt on the point, I, yielding to the whim of the moment, took up the subject as though I considered myself aggrieved rather than benefited by what had been done. "Yes, thanks to you I am. Crimsworth turned me off at a minute's notice, owing to some interference of yours at a public meeting, I understand." "Ah, what? Ah, he mentioned that. He observed me signalling the lads, did he? What had he to say about his friend Hunsden? Anything sweet?" "He called you a treacherous villain." "Oh, he hardly knows me yet. I'm one of those shy people who don't come out all at once, and he is only just beginning to make my acquaintance. But he'll find I've got some good qualities, excellent ones. The Hunsdons were always unrivaled at tracking a rascal. A downright dishonorable villain is their natural prey. They could not keep off him wherever they meet him. You used the word pragmatical just now. That word is the property of our family. It has been applied to us from generation to generation. We have fine noses for abuses. We scent a scoundrel a mile off. We are reformers born, radical reformers, and it was impossible for me to live in the same town with Crimsworth, to come into weekly contact with him, to witness some of his conduct to you, for whom personally I care nothing. I only consider the brutal injustice with which he violated your natural claim to equality. I say it was impossible for me to be thus situated and not feel the angel or the demon of my race at work within me. I followed my instinct, opposed a tyrant, and broke a chain. Now this speech interested me much, both because it had brought out Hunsdon's character and because it explained his motives. It interested me so much that I forgot to reply to it, and sat silent, pondering over a throng of ideas that it suggested. "Are you grateful to me?" he asked presently. In fact, I was grateful, or almost so, and I believe I half liked him at the moment, notwithstanding his proviso that what he had done was not out of regard for me. But human nature is perverse. Impossible to answer his blunt question in the affirmative, so I disclaimed all tendency to gratitude and advised him, if he expected any reward for his championship, to look for it in a better world, as he was not likely to meet with it here. In reply, he termed me a dry-hearted aristocratic scamp, whereupon I again charged him with having taken the bread out of my mouth. "Your bread was dirty, man!" cried Hunsdon. "Dirty and unwholesome. It came through the hands of a tyrant. For I tell you, Crimsworth is a tyrant to his work people, a tyrant to his clerks, and will some day be a tyrant to his wife." "Nonsense. Bread is bread, and a salary is a salary. I've lost mine, and through your means." "There's sense in what you say after all," rejoined Hunsdon. "I must say I am rather agreeably surprised to hear you make so practical an observation as that last. I had imagined now, from my previous observation of your character, that the sentimental delight you would have taken in your newly regained liberty would, for a while at least, have effaced all ideas of forethought and prudence. I think better of you for looking so steadily to the needful." "Looking steadily to the needful? How can I do otherwise? I must live, and to live I must have what you call the needful, which I can only get by working. I repeat it, you have taken my work from me." "What do you mean to do?" pursued Hunsdon coolly. "You have influential relations, I suppose. They'll soon provide you with another place." "Influential relations? Who? I should like to know their names." "The Seacombes." "Stuff! I have cut them." Hunsdon looked at me incredulously. "I have," said I, "and that definitively." "You must mean they have cut you, William." "As you please. They offered me their patronage on condition of my entering the church. I declined both the terms and the recompense. I withdrew from my cold uncles and preferred throwing myself into my elder brother's arms, from whose affectionate embrace I am now torn by the cruel intermeddling of a stranger, of yourself, in short." I could not repress a half-smile as I said this. A similar demi-manifestation of feeling appeared at the same moment on Hunsdon's lips. "Oh, I see," said he, looking into my eyes, and it was evident he did see right down into my heart. Having sat a moment or two with his chin resting on his hand, diligently occupied in the continual perusal of my countenance, he went on. "Seriously, have you then nothing to expect from the Seacombes?" "Yes, rejection and repulsion. Why do you ask me twice? How can hands stained with the ink of a counting-house, soiled with the grease of a wool warehouse, ever again be permitted to come into contact with aristocratic palms?" "There would be a difficulty, no doubt. Still, you are such a complete Seacombe in appearance, feature, language, almost manner. I wonder they should disown you." "They have disowned me, so talk no more about it." "Do you regret it, William?" "No." "Why not, lad?" because they are not people with whom I could ever have had any sympathy.
I say you're one of them.
That merely proves that you know nothing at all about it. I am my mother's son, not my uncle's nephew.
Still, one of your uncles is a lord, though rather an obscure and not a very wealthy one, and the other a right honourable. You should consider worldly interest.
Nonsense, Mr. Hunsden. You know or may know that even had I desired to be submissive to my uncles, I could not have stooped with a good enough grace ever to have won their favour. I should have sacrificed my own comfort, and not have gained their patronage in return.
Very likely. So you calculated your wisest plan was to follow your own devices at once.
Exactly. I must follow my own devices. I must, till the day of my death, because I can neither comprehend, adopt, nor work out those of other people.
Hunsden yawned. Well, said he, in all this I see but one thing clearly. That is, that the whole affair is no business of mine.
He stretched himself and again yawned.
I wonder what time it is, he went on. I have an appointment for 7 o'clock.
6:15 by my watch.
Well, then, I'll go.
He got up.
You'll not meddle with trade again, said he, leaning his elbow on the mantelpiece.
No, I think not.
You would be a fool if you did. Probably, after all, you'll think better of your uncle's proposal and go into the church.
A singular regeneration must take place in my whole inner and outer man before I do that. A good clergyman is one of the best of men.
Indeed? Do you think so? Interrupted Hunsden scoffingly.
I do, and no mistake. But I have not the peculiar points which go to make a good clergyman, and rather than adopt a profession for which I have no vocation, I would endure extremities of hardship from poverty.
You're a mighty difficult customer to suit. You won't be a tradesman or a parson. You can't be a lawyer or a doctor or a gentleman, because you've no money. I'd recommend you to travel.
What? Without money?
You must travel in search of money, man. You can speak French, with vile English accent, no doubt. Still, you can speak it. Go on to the continent and see what'll turn up for you there.
God knows I should like to go, exclaimed I with involuntary ardour.
Go! What the deuce hinders you? You may get to Brussels, for instance, for £5 or £6, if you know how to manage with economy.
Necessity would teach me if I didn't.
Go then, and let your wits make a way for you when you get there. I know Brussels almost as well as I know X, and I am sure it would suit such a one as you better than London.
But occupation, Mr. Hunsden. I must go where occupation is to be had, and how could I get recommendation or introduction or employment at Brussels?
There speaks the organ of caution. You hate to advance a step before you know every inch of the way. You haven't a sheet of paper and a pen and ink?
I hope so. And I produced writing materials with alacrity, for I guessed what he was going to do. He sat down, wrote a few lines, folded, sealed, and addressed a letter, and held it out to me.
There, Prudence, there's a pioneer to hew down the first rough difficulties of your path. I know well enough, lad, you're not one of those who will run their neck into a noose without seeing how they're going to get it out. And you're right there. A reckless man is my aversion, and nothing should ever persuade me to meddle with the concerns of such a one. Those who are reckless for themselves are generally 10 times more so for their friends.
This is a letter of introduction, I suppose, said I, taking the epistle.
Yes, with that in your pocket you'll run no risk of finding yourself in a state of absolute destitution, which I know you will regard as a degradation. So should I, for the matter. The person to whom you will present it generally has 2 or 3 respectable places depending upon his recommendation.
That will just suit me, said I.
Well, and where's your gratitude?
Demanded Mr. Hunsden.
Don't you know how to say thank you?
I've £15 in a watch, which my godmother, whom I never saw, gave me 18 years ago, was my rather irrelevant answer, and I further avowed myself a happy man, and professed that I did not envy any being in Christendom.
But your gratitude!
I shall be off presently, Mr. Hunsden, tomorrow, if all be well. I'll not stay a day longer in X than I'm obliged.
Very good, but it will be decent to make due acknowledgment for the assistance you have received. Be quick, it's just going to strike 7. I'm waiting to be thanked.
Just stand out of the way, will you, Mr. Hunsden? I want a key there is on the corner of the mantelpiece. I'll pack my portmanteau before I go to bed." The house clock struck 7. "The lad is a heathen," said Hunsden, and taking his hat from a sideboard, he left the room, laughing to himself. I had half an inclination to follow him. I really intended to leave X the next morning, and should certainly not have had another opportunity of bidding him good-bye. The front door banged to. "Let him go," said I. "We shall meet again some day." And that is where we are going to leave it for today. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, get me out there to all your friends, and join me next time for more exciting chapters from the Professor. Bye!